The NFL has a complicated official position on firearms. The league strongly recommends that players not own guns, while admitting it cannot legally stop them. The result is a league where ownership is enormous, with estimates from players themselves running as high as 90%, and where the relationships with firearms range from responsible hunters and collectors to players who have landed in serious legal trouble. Today, we are covering the NFL's most notable legal gun owners and Second Amendment supporters, the players who have been public about it and done it right. Brett Favre grew up in Kiln, Mississippi, and never left that identity behind, no matter how famous he got. Favre is an avid hunter who has spoken throughout his career about chasing deer, turkey, and other game across the South. His relationship with firearms is rooted entirely in the Southern hunting tradition that raised him. Guns as tools for putting food on the table and as a rite of passage handed from father to son. In the rural South Favre came from, the question was never whether you owned guns, it was what you were hunting. Troy Aikman, the Hall of Fame Cowboys quarterback and longtime broadcaster, is another NFL figure with a well-documented love of hunting. Aikman has been public about hunting throughout his post-playing career, and his Texas background puts him squarely in the firearms culture that defines much of that state. The three-time Super Bowl champion represents the large contingent of NFL players from the South and Southwest for whom gun ownership is so ordinary it barely registers as a statement. His broadcasting profile has kept him careful about overt politics, but his hunting and ownership have never been a question. Tight end Benjamin Watson is one of the more thoughtful public voices on firearms in NFL history, not because he is an enthusiast, but because he engaged with the question of responsible ownership more seriously than most. When the NFL added firearms conduct material to its social responsibility training, Watson publicly supported it, emphasizing safe storage and responsible ownership rather than calling for restrictions. He cited the Second Amendment as the reason the league could not simply tell players not to own guns, while arguing that responsible ownership was something the league and its players had a duty to model. Own legally, store safely, treat the weapon with appropriate seriousness. That is the position most responsible American gun owners hold, and hearing a prominent player articulate it clearly was notable. Wide receiver Jabar Gaffney, who played for the Patriots among other teams, gave one of the most quoted estimates of NFL gun ownership when he told ESPN that he believed roughly 9% of NFL players owned firearms. Gaffney, a gun owner himself, made the point that the sheer prevalence of ownership made education and responsible ownership conversations far more useful than blanket discouragement most players would ignore anyway. That 90% figure has been cited again and again, and it reflects the cultural reality of a league drawn heavily from Southern, Southwestern, and rural backgrounds where gun ownership is simply a given. Marshawn Lynch, Beast Mode, the most feared running back of his generation, has a documented and unambiguous relationship with firearms. Lynch grew up in Oakland, California, where the personal security calculus that drives gun ownership is immediate and real. He has been photographed with firearms in various contexts and has never been shy about ownership. Lynch is also a businessman and community figure in Oakland who understands the difference between responsible ownership and careless use, the way someone from his community has to. His relationship with firearms reflects the Oakland reality he came from, not a hunting tradition or a political pose, but a practical approach to personal safety. NFL players face a legal patchwork that makes responsible ownership more complicated than it is for most Americans. Players split time between their home state, their team's city, and the road, potentially crossing a dozen states with different carry laws over a single season. The league's conduct policy bars firearms from team facilities, team travel, and league events. Beyond that, players are on their own legally, which means anyone who carries needs to understand the laws of every state they pass through on team business. The Firearm Owners Protection Act provides safe passage protections for interstate transport, but only under specific conditions. Players who travel with firearms have to be far more legally sophisticated than the average owner. Several high-profile situations involving NFL players and guns came down to that jurisdictional complexity rather than bad intent. Players carrying legally at home who did not realize their permit was not honored where they were. The gun culture in the NFL is inseparable from where its talent comes from. The states that produce the most NFL players, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, are among the most gun-friendly in the country. A kid who grows up in rural Texas or Georgia, plays high school football in a town where deer season is as big as homecoming, and goes on to the NFL, carries that identity with him. For most of those players, hunting is not a celebrity effectuation. It is the off-season they looked forward to their whole lives. The thing they did with their father and grandfather, the ritual that ties professional success back to where they came from. Brett Favre driving home to Kiln every off-season to hunt is not a story about a famous man doing something unusual. It is a story about a man going home and doing what he has always done. The NFL and firearms is ultimately a story about America telling on itself. A league that draws its talent overwhelmingly from gun-friendly communities that cannot legally prohibit ownership while quietly discouraging it, and whose players own guns at rates somewhere between 50 and 90%, depending on who you ask. The NFL cannot be a league of Southern and Southwestern men and also a gun-free zone. Those two things do not coexist. What it can do, and what players like Benjamin Watson and Brett Favre model, is be a league of responsible gun owners. That is the real argument. Not whether players own guns, but whether they own them well. Own legally, store safely, carry responsibly. With initiatives like the social responsibility training Watson endorsed, the league is slowly moving toward having that conversation honestly. If this gave you a new perspective on the NFL and firearms, hit that like button and subscribe. And tell us in the comments which current player you think is the most likely gun enthusiast. Stay safe, stay armed. We will see you on the next one.